Hey folks, in the last series we talked about the nervous system and how it organizes and controls the body by receiving and sending information through the nerves. Now we're going to talk about the other controller of the body, the endocrine system. To call it the other controller probably isn't the most correct. It's another tool that the brain can use to control the body or manipulate the body. Where the nervous system is fast and instantaneous in its changes, they're often short term. The sympathetic system can only increase your blood pressure and heart rate on its own for a little while, or the parasympathetic system can only do so much to improve digestion. This is where the endocrine system comes in. The endocrine system is a series of glands throughout the body that release hormones. Remember those from back in our chemistry chapter. These hormones have longer-term effects on the body and supplement what the sympathetic or parasympathetic system are trying to do, sometimes. They take a little longer to take effect, and that's because these hormones have to travel through the bloodstream and reach their desired target organ before they can work. It's just a little bit slower than jumping across a synapse. There are 10 different hormones, and they all serve a different purpose. My expectation for you guys is that you know what each endocrine organ is, what hormones they release, and what function are they trying to serve. So before we dive too deep into that, let's have a step back and review positive and negative feedback. We talked about it in our first week of the course, but it's a really important topic for this section, so let's just have a quick review. So the goal of the body is homeostasis, that's keeping everything in balance. If cells aren't getting enough blood or oxygen, for example, there needs to be a system to improve that. If there's too much blood going for the cells, likewise, we need to be able to rein that in. This is an example of negative feedback. The body recognizes a change, and then the system works to correct it. Positive feedback is when the system notices a change and then works to amplify it or keep it going. The most common example is delivering a baby. Alright, so that's the purpose of the endocrine system, managing changes in the body. It does this by using glands, special tissues that secrete chemicals called hormones. Endocrine glands are glands that secrete hormones into the bloodstream, whereas the exocrine glands secrete chemicals on top of or into other tissues. We saw those in the integumentary system when we talked about sweat glands, and we'll also see them in the digestive system. So to define a hormone even further, we can break these guys down into steroid and non-steroid. Non-steroid hormones bind to receptor sites on the outside of the cell membrane, and then that triggers a response on the inside. It's kind of like ringing a doorbell on the outside of the house, and the people inside stand up. Steroid hormones actually enter the cell, bind to receptors inside the nucleus, and affect the types of proteins and the different effects these proteins have, all from the inside. So to kind of follow with that analogy of the doorbell, instead of ringing the doorbell, a steroid hormone will run in the house and pick the person up. A great example of a steroid hormone could be cortisol, which is released from our adrenal glands when we get stressed, and it plays a big role in regulating metabolism and blood pressure. So before we finish this video and dive into the different glands, as you're learning about the anatomy and physiology, don't forget to consider pathology, or what happens when things break. In the endocrine system, typically that means either hypo or hypersecretion. Too little or too much of the required hormone is being produced. A great example is type 1 diabetes, a really common issue of the pancreas where it doesn't secrete the amount of insulin required to get sugar into the cells. In these cases, oftentimes the treatment is artificial hormones. Diabetics will inject themselves with insulin to keep their blood sugars at the right level. Sometimes you can have issues with the target cells, particularly with the non-steroid producing glands. In some cases, the target cells become desensitized to the hormone, and they don't act the way they should. In the cases of type 2 diabetes, which typically present in adults, a lifetime of a few too many sweets, no judgment here, I'm a fiend for Twizzlers, can cause the cells of the body to require more insulin before they allow sugar inside. These patients may take pills to make their cells more receptive to insulin, or if that doesn't work, they may have to start injecting insulin. So try and keep the pathologies in mind when we're learning about these body systems. If you know how it works when everything's fine, it's easier to figure out what's going on when things don't work well.